Want to break down on some of the latest topics from college to the pros? We interview many individuals to share their knowledge about the news stories surrounding the teams and its players. This is Nothing But That Sports Talk. Welcome back to another episode of Nothing But That Sports Talk. I'm Rafique Louison alongside Bailey. You've seen her on this episode before, so I don't need to tell you how good of a special guest she was the last time. We talked about her journey. We talked about pretty much her love for the game of basketball. And yeah, there's no basketball going on at all.
Unfortunately.
But you know what? There is one certain basketball documentary coming out, and it's to pay homage to the great Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I was super excited that they decided to release that early. Honestly, it's smart in all aspects. I think it's smart because most people, you should be staying home. So, what else do we have to do? And then also really smart for ESPN because it's more money, more viewers, more advertising dollars. So it's good all the way around, and I'm very excited to see it.
Speaking of ESPN, I already had one of my other special guests, Jackson Brown. If you watched the last episode, she got laid off. You can talk about her story about why she got laid off on ESPN. But yeah, ESPN is the worldwide leader of sports. They have to provide some kind of sport content to keep people occupied until the live sports come back. I mean, it's a tough time for everybody right now, and it's also tough that we don't have March Madness. And well, speaking of March Madness, this week would have been the prep up for the Final Four. What are your top Final Four and championship moments of all time? Name three.
Gosh. Okay, so I was thinking about this before I came on, and I feel like a lot of mine, or March Madness favorite moments are early in the tournament, I guess. Not necessarily the first four to get in, first four out or whatever, but more so just the round of 32. I think there's always crazy upsets. I remember, this probably would have been 7 years ago at this point, maybe, when Stephen F. Austin won their first game. I was actually there, and they hit a three. I remember I can't remember the guy's name now, but this player hit this crazy off-balance three to send it to overtime. They were able to keep that momentum going through the whole 5 minutes of overtime. They ended up winning the game, so that was really crazy. I'm pretty sure they beat VCU when Shaka Smart was there. And then I think it was 2008. Yeah, 2008 when Kansas played Memphis. I think it was in the national championship game, was when John Calipari was coaching Memphis, so this was before his Kentucky days, and Derrick Rose was there, and I think there was 10 seconds left in the game or something like that, and Derrick Rose, I think, split his free throw, so I think he just made one of two, so I think then their lead was 3 or something like that. But anyways, it ended up, so Mario Chalmers was when he was at Kansas, and he hit a three with 2 seconds left or something like that. Ended up sending the game to overtime, and I'm pretty sure, Kansas, I think, scored the first 5, 6, 7 points or something. In overtime, they ended up winning the national championship, and I always thought that was really crazy because it was kind of this weird glimmer into Calipari's future where he had top-notch NBA talent, wasn't able to get it done, and it's kind of, I feel been his story at Kentucky. I mean, he obviously has won some championships here and there, but I mean, he's had teams that have had 8 NBA top-notch NBA guys on it. Keep in mind, those are guys coming off the bench in college basketball. They never won championships. So it goes to show you, you never can really expect anything, or never know what to expect in March / April with March Madness. I mean, you have guys who are gonna go on to be NBA superstars who are playing and they don't win the championship, so it's never a done deal, and that's why I love March Madness. And this year I was especially sad that it was canceled because my San Diego State Aztecs were pretty good this year.
Yeah, we're gonna get to your San Diego Aztecs in a little bit, but you mentioned the Mario Chalmers game-tying shot was one of the greatest, going against a Memphis team led by Derrick Rose, it's crazy because Mario Chalmers and Derrick Rose both had good careers, at least in the early portion of it, before Derrick Rose had that season-ending injury during the 2012 playoffs. And Mario Chalmers was part of two championship teams for the Miami Heat in 4 championship appearances alongside Dwayne Wade. When he came to the Miami Heat, he made relevant again because that was the same season where Dwayne Wade had the worst season of his life. It's so worse. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal got traded to the Phoenix Suns, and he still lost in the first round to San Antonio of all teams. And then that was back when the San Antonio Spurs. It wasn't really that great of a series, but Tim Duncan hit the game-tying three-pointer at that time. It was just a lot going on in the year 2008. But it was sticking on top with March Madness. Mario Chalmers has to be one of the greatest players to ever set foot in a March Madness basketball game.
Oh, absolutely.
And Stephen F. Austin, that was one of the greatest moments you ever see. And I gotta give him credit when credit's due against VCU. I mean.
And then another game I remember, this just popped into my head. Another game I was at was, gosh, it also would have been, would have been 2010, 2011. I think that season was when Kawhi Leonard was at San Diego State, and the last kind of time San Diego State was really good nationally in basketball, and they were playing up in Anaheim. It's kind of like the halfway point between LA and San Diego. So it was San Diego State versus UConn, and I think San Diego State was like a 3 seed, I think. And this was when Kemba Walker was.
Oh, you know, I was talking about.
The only time in my life that I remember Kawhi Leonard getting a technical foul. Like, only time in my entire life. I could be wrong, obviously, on that. I don't watch every single one of his NBA games, but it was crushing, first of all, because it was basically the equivalent of a home game for San Diego State, because, I mean, it's 45 minutes, an hour away. Just up the freeway, so it wasn't that far, so there was a ton of San Diego State fans, and it was just, I mean, you just couldn't have been more, like, frustrated. I mean, Kemba Walker was just so good that there was, like, no way you were going to it was crazy.
Man.
I think they also had Jeremy Lamb at that time, and, God, the two of them were just, they were unbelievable. That game was, I mean, if I wasn't a San Diego State fan, I am, and I can still give them all the props in the world, because it's really hard to go into basically an away game atmosphere in March Madness and put on the type of performance they did against the type of talent that was on that San Diego State team.
I mean, what you expect? It's Cardi and Kemba's season that time. Cardi and Kemba was having the greatest season of his life, something he couldn't do in the NBA, but you know what? He was having the best season of his life on the Boston Celtics this year, and you're going to have to wait till December to see how useful you would be leading the Celtics to a deep run in the playoffs. You might have to wait till summer for that one. But you know what? Looking back then, since we're talking about San Diego Aztec was having the greatest season of their life, losing only one game in late seconds, and then they lost to the championship tournament as well. But you know what? If the cancellation did not happen, they might have had a deep run at it. But you know, it's always next season.
I mean, there is next season. The issue is they're they're not losing a ton of guys. It hasn't, the deadline to enter into the draft pool hasn't come up yet, so you don't know. Like, some of the guys could be deciding that they want to declare for the draft, hire an agent. But I will say they have a decent amount of guys coming back, but they're losing, like, a super key piece in Yanni Wetzell. He was, the difference between what will be, if the people who I think will stay, and really they only lose a true senior in Yanni Wetzell, he provided that when you're playing a team, when you're a coach for an opposing team, you're going to play the San Diego State team, you're like going, okay, so we have Malachi Flynn who can go off at any time offensively, we have Matt Mitchell who can go off at any time offensively, and then you also have Yanni Wetzell down low who could go off any time offensively. So now you lose Yanni, so now you only are prepping for, there's going to be some other guys coming in, obviously, but with the type of experience that Matt Mitchell and Malachi Flynn have coming in to the season, it's a lot different prepping for two guys who can go crazy offensively, drop 30, 40. I think they would definitely be able to drop 40 in a game, versus only prepping for two guys. So the difference between 2 and 3 guys who are just super strong offensive weapons is massive. So that's where, it's a little sad. And then obviously just the guys who were seniors who are having obviously the best season in school history and don't get to go to the tournament, who lose their conference championship game and go, oh well, it's okay, we have the tournament coming up, and then they don't. But also you look at it from a public health standpoint, and I think when it first got canceled, it was kind of like, what? Like, why didn't you just postpone it? And I think as time went on, you kind of understood, even for as big of a basketball fan that I am, you kind of understand. You're like, okay, yeah, it wouldn't have been the same if there wasn't fans. It wouldn't have been the same having to play it the way that they would have. And I think now with everything that's going on across the country, especially in New York and LA and stuff, you're like, there's just no way that they would have been able to play it.
Yeah.
Bigger fish to fry at this point.
Yeah, and as a sports fan growing up and a potential sports journalist, we have to realize that safety is our number one priority in this world. I mean, sports is a big aspect to the world, but what good are you to play sports when you're always dealing with certain health issues? It's like, I don't know. But you know what? There is a lot of interesting stuff that happened in the NBA between the last time you was on this episode up until now. Like the resurgence of the Los Angeles Lakers. They were having one of the best seasons post Kobe Bryant. We're going to get to Kobe Bryant in a minute. But you know what? This was epic. They had the best weekend of their life. I mean, literally a missed Anthony Davis three-pointer for them to lose to Brooklyn.
I mean, yeah.
Prior to the suspension.
I think they were finally kind of gelling. I mean, obviously it takes time for any team to gel, whether you're talking basketball, soccer, football, whatever it is, whatever sport it may be. But I think that you kind of got to see, like, it was weird, like in real time, you got to see them like gelling in front of your eyes, which is super cool as a sports fan to get to see. Now if you're not a Lakers fan, it's not super cool, because they just have so many guys who are just who are unbelievably good. I mean, it's insane when you kind of sit back and you literally look at a Los Angeles Lakers roster from this season on paper. You're like, ew, what? Like, how can they have that many good people on their team? Like, but yeah, it's gonna be super interesting. I don't think they'll have a season the rest of this year, honestly. I just think that at this point it would be too hard for the league to come back. But next season I think the Clippers are, I don't know if it's going to be ready in time, but the owner, Steve Ballmer, just bought the Inglewood Forum, so now they're both not going to be at Staples Center, so I think that's going to be really fun to watch. And I think just the Lakers, I mean, they're going to be, we thought they were good, the last couple of weeks that we got to see them play when the season was still going on. I mean, they're going to be sickeningly good, I think, next season, and it's going to be very sad for if you are like a Clippers fan, or if you are, be interesting to see. I didn't think about this, but when Steph Curry comes back and Klay Thompson come back, it'll be interesting to see them with the Warriors. But I think, if you are a Western Conference basketball fan, next season's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I know. But you know what? Anything can happen in the NBA season. Because, like Karis LeVert scored off for 51 points against the Boston Celtics. The New York Knicks defeated the Atlanta Hawks at what might be Vince Carter's last game of his career. And let's talk about Vince Carter for a little bit, because this is the first NBA player to play at least one or a couple games in 4 different decades.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I need to look up when he
You were literally babies when this man was doing them in one related dunks.
I don't know what he got drafted in
98. 98.
98. So the first time, or the last time I was alive and he wasn't playing in the NBA, I would have been, let's see, the draft was in May of 98. I would have been 1.5 years old. I couldn't talk. Didn't even start school yet. I wasn't even so my entire schooling career, preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, college, he was playing in the league. So the last time he wasn't playing in the NBA, I was the equivalent, like, one and a half.
I didn't watch the NBA until I was 14 years old, so you're not alone. I wasn't watching the NBA during the 90s. At least you get to look back at it with the Michael Jordan documentary. But you know what? With Vince Carter, even though he never won a championship, he did have a lot of incredible moments. Like the game-tying shot as a Dallas Maverick against the San Antonio Spurs, even though they did lose that series. Or how the epic game against the Toronto Raptors in 2009.
I mean, the thing is he's just, like, he's played, obviously, like you said, so many decades that, I mean, the guys who he's played against, the guys who you've seen, like, who he's gotten to play against as opponents in their prime is, like, insane. I mean, you're talking LeBron, obviously, Kobe, D-Wade, Shaq, you know, all these guys who you're just like, oh, wow, like, you know, Shaq's been retired for, you know, however many years now, D-Wade's retired, and you're kind of going like, wow, like, he's still playing. You know, it's one of those things where you're like, flip on the game and you're like, what? Is this an old game? Vince Carter's still playing? Like, still playing at a high level? It's crazy. Like, he the care he must have taken of his body is, you know, second to none probably other than LeBron. Because that's the other thing is you look at D-Wade and you think, okay, like the class of 2003, so you're like Carmelo, D-Wade, LeBron. You're like, okay, Carmelo's, you know, near the end of his career probably, even though he's had quite the resurgence in Portland. But then you're like, oh, D-Wade, you know, is retired, had a fantastic career, but retired a year ago. And then you're like, how the heck is LeBron still playing to the level that he's playing?
Because
you know,
he takes care of his body and he's healthy. And you can't sleep on the fact that LeBron James is one of the greatest players of all time. He turned literally 2 losing teams into NBA Finals teams. Just like that.
It's unbelievable.
Let's look back at the buzzer beaters LeBron James had in 2018, his last season as a Cavalier.
With 3 seconds left, Cleveland triggers in. James, 2 seconds, 1 second for the win. Oh! LeBron James delivers! That's a winner in Cleveland! To the front court. Here's LeBron. James, catch, fire, ball game! He did it! LeBron James wins it for Cleveland!
Yeah, and now the big thing is make sure you do not foul anybody here on the dribble.
It's going to be James.
Sure, here it is. See, it's under
3 seconds to go. Throws up the floater. Oh, flush! Good night, Cleveland! That is for you!
What more can you say? And that was back when I just started my podcast. A game winner against Minnesota, a buzzer beater against Indiana in Game 5, and then a buzzer beater against the Toronto Raptors, the last playoff series they lost before they won their recent championship. LeBron will go down as one of the greats of all time, even though he did miss the playoffs last year. But when you added star power on your team, you can't sleep on this guy. You can't.
No, absolutely not. And
it's LeBron James.
I hope he'll get to play in the league with his son. I think that would be really, really cool.
Well, his son graduates high school in about 3 more years, so that could happen. That could happen.
Oh, yeah.
His son, along with Dwayne Wade's son, it will be like how it was Dwayne Wade and LeBron James back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I read a story. I can't remember where it was published, but I read a story that, you know, one of the rookies, I think on the Lakers, came over to LeBron's house, and he was playing with Bronny. He was playing video games with Bronny, and LeBron was like, I kind of realized, like, wow, these rookies who are 18, 19, 20 years old, who are coming into the league, who are playing with LeBron, now have more in common with his son, who's probably 15, 16, something like that, than they do with him, because he is now an older player in the NBA, but you just don't even think about that, you know, and I think that speaks, the fact that you don't think about that, and it doesn't really cross your mind that often, I think that speaks volumes to how talented he is and how well he took care of his body.
Yeah. And the fact that he's playing on the one team that Kobe Bryant has ever played for is even incredible. Mm-hmm. Speaking of Kobe Bryant, I know you was at the Mural last winter when Kobe Bryant passed away, where they had all those cards and flowers right by the Staples Centers. I know you was over there. What went through your mind when Kobe Bryant passed away and seeing all those support that his fans have given to him?
Yeah, well, first of all, so I was actually went to Quentin Richardson had me out to I went out to Atlanta to watch filming of his podcast, and they had Shaq on was their guest that week. So I was in Atlanta to watch that, and had kind of a weird flight path back. So I ended up flying from Atlanta to Seattle, and I spent the night in Seattle with one of my friends from college. Got on a plane the next morning and flew to San Diego. And when we landed, my phone kept going. I turned it off airplane mode. I kept getting all these text messages that were like, "Oh, I can't believe it," and I'm thinking something happened to my brother or my parents or something, and I was like, what? But no one said anything. They just said, "Oh, I can't believe it. Did you see?" And I was like, what are people talking about? And so then the flight attendants came on and were like, "Oh, welcome to San Diego," whatever they normally say, local time and stuff. Then they were like, "Oh, we regret to inform you that Kobe Bryant has passed away in a helicopter."
At the airport? Wow.
Yeah. They said it on our plane when we landed. They were like, Kobe Bryant has passed away in a helicopter accident. And the worst part is that they said this was it probably happened 30 or 40 minutes before we landed, and they said, so this was when not obviously accurate information was coming out about it. So they were like, also all 4 of his daughters were on board. And people were sad when they said Kobe died, but when they said all 4 of his daughters were on board, there was a literal gasp let out by every single person on the plane that I was around. And it was a smaller plane. It was one of those commuter planes. There was just 2 seats on each side, so it wasn't that big. And there was a literal I get goosebumps talking about it, a gasp. And people were just and I obviously went on the internet to see and pulled up an article about it, and I kind of showed the phone to the guy next to me, and I was like, "Did you see this?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's horrible, it's crazy." And so I, as soon as I got off the plane, had texted Q to send my condolences and reached out to Corey Maggette. Their families were really close, so sent my condolences to him, to Nancy Lieberman, who's my mentor, and she had told me that she had talked to him on the phone the day before. He obviously, she's a pioneer in women's basketball, one of the best women's basketball players ever, and pioneer for women in men's basketball. So he had just asked her to come out to LA, what would have been that next week, to coach Gigi's team, help them out at a practice, and obviously give them some pointers and stuff like that. And it was really just crazy, and it was kind of I was younger when Michael Jackson died, but it was kind of like that. You couldn't stop watching the news, but then you also the way in which he passed away was just such a horrible accident that it was the worst reminder of, it doesn't matter who you are, anything can happen at any time. And that, I just kept telling people, I'm like, man, you would have thought that he would have just jumped out of the helicopter, flown underneath it, lifted it up and saved everyone. You can't really imagine, oh, that's what should have happened. It shouldn't have ended in a crash. No, Kobe should have jumped out and he would have been fine. That's how larger than life he was. So it was obviously just horrible all the way around, and horrible for every person involved. The young girl who lost her parents and sister, horrible. People lost moms and sisters and wives, and all of that. So it's just dads, all around horrible. And I think about a week or so after it happened, I went up to LA, to LA Live, right outside the Staples Center, and it was so, you would have thought it happened 2 hours ago. It was unbelievable. If my phone was sitting right here, I would pull up pictures and show you. It was there was people still crying, and so I think that basketball fans. It was like you saw entire families there, like leaving basketballs, handwritten messages, handwritten letters, jerseys, candles, flowers. It's something that people's lives are always so busy that, you think about the time that they took to go buy a bouquet of flowers and then bring the whole family there or whatever it may have been. Like, it's kind of crazy how, and really kind of incredible how much impact one person could have on not only a city and community, but the world. So it's just crazy. And you obviously, and you still can't even think, you still don't even think it's real, even with all the craziness going on with COVID-19 right now, you don't think about it, but when you do, you're still like, man, did that actually happen? Is this real? So it's horribly sad and just a terrible accident, terrible accident.
You would really think that his death would only happen at least 10 to 15 years after retiring from the league. But it only happened in less than 4.
Right. Yeah, and it's just so sad, too, because he was doing, him and his daughter, you see pictures of him and Gigi next to each other, and I'm like, wow, they were twins. There's videos that have come out since his passing where, interviews that he's like, yeah, I would watch her on the court, and the mannerisms are the same, and stuff like that. So it's just horribly sad. I mean, really sad that it's Kobe, but even more sad that there were kids involved and everything else. So just all the way around, a bad situation. Very bad.
Yeah, it really is. Now, what are your top 3 Kobe Bryant highlights of all time?
Oh my gosh. Well, the first one, it's not really a highlight, but it's more a funny moment. Who I can't remember who else was in it, but somebody was inbounding the ball. And Kobe was guarding them. It's kind of become like a meme on Twitter now. And the guy who's inbounding the ball, if this pen was a ball, kind of pump fakes right in his face. And Kobe literally doesn't flinch at all. I'm not kidding. Literally doesn't even bat an eye. And I just think that that's the most Kobe thing ever. That there's some kid who has been in the league for 3 years, and he's pump faking the ball in his face to try to throw Kobe off or whatever, and he's just completely unfazed by it. And I love that video. I just think it's the most Kobe thing. And I mean, when he went to the finals 3 consecutive years, that team was really fun to watch. That's kind of when I first started watching the NBA. And you had Derek Fisher on that team, and Pau Gasol, and all those guys, and that was just a really fun team to watch because their skills complemented each other so well. Derek Fisher and Pau Gasol were star players in their prime, but on that team, it's Kobe was obviously the biggest star, but it wasn't like today where you have star players who can't play on the same team together. They just gelled really well, and it was no one cared who got the credit. It was just let's go win championships. And I mean, God, the amount of plays I could list off when they would play the Celtics, or when they played the Celtics in the finals, it's unbelievable. I mean, that was one of my favorite series to watch ever. It's just you had Garnett and Ray Allen and Paul Pierce on the Celtics playing Kobe and Pau and Derek, and you're just it was just golden basketball. So I don't know if I want to name specific plays as much as just I think that's what makes a great player is obviously everybody has great highlights, but a great player, I think they have so many great plays that it blends together into series and years and stuff like that. And I think that's what Kobe did. And the fact that the first clip that came to my mind wasn't necessarily him scoring or anything, that was more so his mannerisms and his mantra, I think speaks to how he transcended basketball, honestly. I think. Yeah,
that's true. But you mentioned the type of roster that Kobe Bryant had during his final championship season. You forgot one player, Ron Artest, the guy that had the put-back shot against the Phoenix Suns. Let's look back at it.
You cannot let him get his hands on this basketball. And you got to stay down and be disciplined because you know how well he shot fakes
Dudley defending on Bryant. Both teams are over the foul limit. Odom will throw in. Bryant turns and comes up short. Arteta buzzer! Ron Artest, who took that bad shot just a moment ago. The Suns are shocked. They will review it. It appeared he got it off on time. Ron Artest with the game winner for the Lakers.
How about 1 minute, what are you doing? And the next one is like, great shot. What a tough play.
And you know what? The Lakers could not match with Steve Nash and Amari's Suns. Even though Kobe Bryant did have the miracle shot in Game 4, they couldn't hang with the Phoenix Suns when they had Nash and Amari. But that one series literally ended it all.
That was just a crusher, a heartbreaker for Suns fans. And, you know, I spent 4 years in Arizona at school, and they hold on to that. I'll say that. They haven't gotten over it. And I mean, it was a heartbreaker. And you hope for Suns fans that, I promise I'm not getting choked up over this, just a tickle in my throat. You hope for Suns fans that, you know, they got Devin Booker now, and they've got Kelly Oubre, and they've gotten you know, just a ton of other great guys on their roster, talented guys, and you're like, you really hope that they can get back to that position. But I mean, then you look at the Lakers again, and you're like, could you really get past the Lakers? You know, so it'll be interesting. But that Suns team, they're a young team, and they have a lot of promise. And I mean, Devin Booker is one of the most talented guys, I think, in the NBA today. And he's gonna be really fun to watch for a really long time.
Yeah, he's had a couple of 70-point games, which is like, well, not as great as Kobe Bryant's 81-point game, but Devin Booker, he's up there. And as we talked about the last time he was on this podcast, the Suns, well, at the end, the Suns actually started off promising, but they got destroyed. And especially, I had a chance to go to the Nets and Suns game last month during HBCU night, and well, Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, they couldn't go the candle to the Nets. And this was after Kyrie Irving announced that he was done for the season, along with Kevin Durant. I mean, it was great seeing the Suns live that day.
Yeah, I mean, they have some serious talent. You know, you have DeAndre Ayton, you got, like I said, Devin and Kelly, and I am blanking on who else they have. But those are some pretty young, talented guys. And I mean, I'm pretty sure DeAndre Ayton, I think he's like 21. So he if he takes care of his body, not saying he necessarily will do it to the level of Vince Carter or LeBron James, but if he takes care of his body, I think this Suns team has some serious potential. You know, that Devin Booker can't be older than, I think he's 23. Kelly Oubre is probably 23, 24. So some super young, raw talent. I don't think Devin Booker is that raw anymore, but he's developed really well. But, you know, DeAndre Ayton was out for a while because of that suspension, because of injury. So, I mean, they haven't, and I mean because the rest of the season, they haven't really had that time to gel together really, like the Lakers. They haven't really like clicked as quickly. But I think once they get a full season in, I love their coach. I think he's doing a great job. I think guys are really buying into the system, and they believe in it, which it is, I think, a must when you have young guys who honestly could all still be playing college. Actually, probably not Devin and Kelly, but, you know, they would be either fresh out of college or still able to be on a college roster. So it's one of those things that you're like, you kind of forget that, but then once you come back to it, you're like, oh, okay, you know, they're so young. You know, will they give the Lakers a run for their money this next year? I'm not going to make any promises.
Yeah, we can't make that. I mean, LeBron might not be on the Lakers all that long because he's closer and closer to retiring, and, well, you know, Anthony Davis is on his contract year. But if he does come back, the Lakers are still going to be a problem in the Western Conference.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Lakers, Clippers. You get Steph Curry and Klay Thompson.
And don't forget the Houston Rockets, even though they did lose to the Knicks. As much as I, as happy as I am that the Knicks actually won a game, like it was just pitiful the way the Rockets lost, despite the fact that Russell Westbrook pulled off a serious at the Garden. That literally sucked the vacuum out of Madison Square Garden that night.
I mean, yeah, it's the Western Conference is no joke. You know, you kind of think about it, you're like, oh yeah, you got James Harden and the Rockets, and then you've got Steph and the Warriors, and LeBron and the Lakers, and Kawhi and PG on the Clippers, and then can't forget about the Trailblazers up in Portland. So it's you know, it's one of those things where it's kind of like, unfortunately for the Suns, they're in the Western Conference, where it's just talent after talent after talent after talent after talent on rosters. But you know, it's good. I think it builds, makes you tougher. Honestly,
yeah, it really does.
The opponent, better you get.
But it's going to be a while before we get back any sports or any basketball of any kind.
Absolutely.
And, well, all I gotta say is, we come to the end of this episode of Nothing But That Sports Talk. Thank you for stopping by, Bailey, and I look forward to talking more basketball and more college basketball with you soon. And for those of you out there, stay safe and get your head in the game.